You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast, your local source for upcoming events, hot new listings, and bite-sized interviews with business and community leaders. Here's your host, Brent Jones.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to Season 5, Episode 3 of the Fort Erie Podcast. It is Tuesday, March 1st, 2022, and I'm your host, Brent Jones. My guest joining me today will be three-peat guest Phil Smith, his third time on the Fort Erie Podcast. You know Phil from South Coast Cookhouse, from the Crystal Beach BIA, as a local realtor, as an overall nice guy. He's going to be joining me shortly, and we'll get into that. But first, a few local news headlines. You may have heard that there was a job fair hosted on Saturday at Safari Niagara in Stevensville. Quite a positive turnout, as I understand it, as well. A number of positions needing to be filled, not just at Safari Niagara, but also at its sister businesses, Stevensville Garden Gallery right next door, as well as Stevensville Lawn Service. It was a 5-hour job fair. By the third hour, more than 100 applications had already been received, and this was the first of two. There will be a second job fair, the second one being planned for April 2nd, in case you missed out on the first. So that for information about this story or any news story or anything we talk about today, check out the links in the show notes below this episode to get more information. The second news story that I wanted to touch on is that by law, an Ontario election needs to be held by June 2nd. And right here in the Niagara Falls riding, which of course includes Niagara-on-the-Lake and Fort Erie, it appears the very first provincial election signs have appeared, the first one being on Niagara Stone Road in the form of a mobile billboard featuring progressive conservative candidate Bob Gale. So political campaigning and advertising, as I understand it, can occur and appear at any time before what's called the writ period. The writ period being the 28 days leading up to the election, provided that that advertisement is paid for by the constituency association or party. That's a very wordy explanation from Elections Ontario. Basically what it means is that, hey, there is a mobile billboard featuring Bob Gale up on Niagara Stone Road, and he is running against incumbent MPP Wayne Gates in our riding of the NDP party, and Ashley Waters representing the Liberals. On to this week's hot new listing. I wanted to touch on 88 Queenston Boulevard in Fort Erie, listed for $699,900. So this property is listed by my colleague and teammate Ray Rosatani at Remax Niagara. This property features 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. The home is approximately 30 years old. Nice sized lot, 105 by 109. The property is currently tenanted. This could be a great investment opportunity. Newer shingles and other updates. And it appears the owner will be reviewing offers tonight. So if you are looking to buy or sell, things are moving quick in this market. Give me a call, 905-626-8826. All right, let's see what's on your minds, Fort Erie. Checking in with the Fort Erie Questions and Answers Facebook group. Melanie asks, where can I go to have a trailer hitch installed on my Dodge Grand Caravan at an affordable price? Now, quite a few people in the comments mentioned U-Haul, which is fine. But for a local answer, the most common response I saw was Garrison Muffler Center. A lot of folks saying they got very reasonable pricing and service from Garrison Muffler. Linda asks, is there a place in Fort Erie that transfers a videotape to a DVD or USB or both? I didn't see any businesses locally stated in the comments, but I did see the names of a couple of individuals, and I'll provide those names here. You can look them up on Facebook yourself if you'd like to get a quote. The top answers I saw were Joseph Bird, Bird spelled B-U-R-D, and Kevin Beam, Beam spelled B-E-A-M. So both of these gentlemen live in town, live in Fort Erie. Both can be found on Facebook, and both appear to have quite a number of fans who say that they have done very good work for them in the past. Now on to my chat with Phil Smith. All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm sitting down here with three-peat guest Phil Smith from Crystal Beach. Mr. Smith, how you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal, and it is quite the honor to be the first three-peat guest of the show, and I don't take that lightly at all. It's a lot of responsibility, but I think I'm up for it.
Well, I appreciate it, and I wanted to have on a couple of repeat guests this season, catch up, because a lot's happened over the last couple of years since I started the podcast, and now we've talked about just about everything, the Crystal Beach BIA, we've talked a bit about real estate, we've talked about South Coast Cookhouse. What other projects do you have on the go? I mean, what have you been up to, I guess, COVID notwithstanding, for the past 2 years?
Well, Brent, I haven't been doing anything, so I guess that's the end of the show. I've just been taking a lot of naps, and I haven't heard this the first time hearing of this COVID. Is that something? Is that a new? I don't know what's going. No, it's been really, really, really busy the last couple of years, as you mentioned, with real estate and with the restaurant and the restaurant industry. It's a good example. A lot of changing rules, a lot of changing on the fly and pivoting, and so that's taken up a lot of time. I think we've navigated it, as well as can be, and I remain positive that we're heading in the right direction, and I feel like we've done a pretty good job. So hopefully we're through the woods there. And in terms of Crystal Beach, I've just been, plowing through. I think if we were to rewind that last episode, I would have probably talked about how I was about to start that big project, the old Ontario Hotel.
Well, you know what we did, if I can interrupt you for a sec, we did actually start talking a bit, and I was going to ask you, so what's going on at Derby and Erie? What's happening there?
Well, it's been quite the journey, and honestly, this whole time from when we last spoke on the podcast to now, it's been every single day has been progress. It's been a mammoth project. The plan is obviously there's already 4 good businesses in there already, and there's another 6 that are about to open up in the next couple of months. So there'll be a total of 10 businesses in there, which are unique and cool business people, and going to provide some employment opportunities for people. And then there's about 21 apartments in there, and there's going to be a really cool aspect of it. All the units that are on the upper level that face Derby Road are going to be basically like a boutique hotel.
Well, I think you touched on a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about. First and foremost, talking about, having 10 businesses in that building. I don't know how regularly you listen to the Fort Erie podcast or not, but last season was dominated by Crystal Beach entrepreneurs. Whereas
I listened to a lot of them. Yeah.
It's like just crazy people. During a global health crisis, folks in Crystal Beach are like, let's open businesses, and it's been so cool to see, so many of these great entrepreneurs with ideas popping up there. But the other thing, and maybe, I think Dave Bergeron and I talked a little bit about this last season, is the town cracking down on short-term rentals. I mean, is when you're talking about having kind of a boutique hotel at the top of what used to be the Ontario Hotel, is that kind of part of your solution, do you think, to some of that? Or?
Well, I mean, the short-term rental issue is one that's probably, not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, so many people wouldn't want to be doing them if there wasn't a market for them. I know that in Crystal Beach specifically, there's always been short-term rentals. The rise in popularity of Airbnb has made it, I guess, easier or more attractive. But, you kind of see it from both sides. Obviously there's people that want to come and spend time here in Crystal Beach, and they obviously do support the businesses, and that provides like a lot of revenue for local business. On the other side of the equation, I mean, there are people that have moved to Crystal Beach and have sold their house and moved here, and they're on a nice cul-de-sac, and all of a sudden they're living next door to the Marriott on one side and the Hilton on the other. I think it has more to do with good Airbnb owners and bad Airbnb owners. And there's bad Airbnb owners who don't manage their property very well and let things get out of hand. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that live here year round that have to sort of deal with it. I guess nobody begrudges somebody coming to the village and, enjoying the village and having fun. It's when you have, 10, 12, 15, 18 people show up, and is what's sort of ruining it for everybody. But again, a hot button issue. I'm glad I'm not the one making the decision. I see both sides, but you know what? I'll take this part of it. It's good that people are seeing the positives of wanting to visit Crystal Beach and spend time here, and that's created the demand. So I guess I'll focus on that positive part of it.
Do you think part of the town's solution, whether folks in Crystal Beach are super receptive to this or not, but do you think part of the solution is going to have to be growing up? Because there's not really a lot of opportunities for Crystal Beach to grow out, so to speak, with the lake there. So is there going to have to be sort of high-rise development in time? Like, is that going to have to be part of the solution?
Yeah, I hate to use the word high-rise because that seems like it's it's a long leap from where we are to a high-rise. But I do think that that we as people that live in Ridgeway, Crystal Beach, and Fort Erie, at least have to be open to the idea of a bit more density than what we're used to. If we can be a bit more dense in certain areas of town, not everywhere, but certain areas, then it can help to make walkable, bikeable communities. It can help with parking. It can help with transit. It can help with a whole bunch of things. I'm not saying that everybody, there should be one beside everybody's house, but the idea of a 3-story building or a 4-story building, those are things that are going to be, brought into the mix here. And there is a benefit, even if somebody says, well, I would never live in a condo apartment. Well, there might be somebody who owns a house right now who is now willing to sell their house to move into that. Well, now there's a house available for a young family to move into that would like a detached house. So I do think that, we need a bit of a diversified housing stock. I'm not like, okay, well, let's build 20-story towers everywhere. But I do think that we're going to see a little bit more density than we're used to, a little bit more townhomes, a little bit more maybe mid-rise type stuff in certain areas. Doesn't mean it should go everywhere, but it is, perhaps part of a solution, not the only solution, to sort of give everybody an option to own a home or a place to live.
In the family sense, you've had a lot going on in recent history too. Why don't you update us about your growing family?
Yeah, I'm trying to help with the Crystal Beach population boom here, and as of the end of December, we welcomed a little baby boy into the mix, Calvary Shirk Smith, and my grandfather, who was very influential to me, passed away in 2006. His name was Calvary Shirk, and I always thought if I had the opportunity to have a little baby boy that I wanted to name it after him. So very special to me, and he's been an awesome little boy. He's sleeping well, gaining weight, and he's coming up on 2 months now. So I think it's time we get him involved in the family business here. Maybe start swinging a hammer or doing something. I mean, he's been freeloading for 2 months now, and it's about time we kind of got him to work. So.
Good for you. Good for you. Congratulations, Phil. Well, thank you so much as well. Taking some time here to be my first ever three-peat guest on the Fort Erie Podcast, man. Always appreciate talking with you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. As a quick reminder, to gain more information about anything discussed today, check out the links in the show notes below this episode. I also just wanted to post a reminder about using the contact form. If you want to get in touch with me, go to theforteriepodcast.com, click the contact link at the top of the page. Be sure to tell me about any upcoming community events you might be aware of or involved in. The reason I say that is that I spent quite a bit of time this week scouring all the usual places for upcoming Fort Erie events. Facebook, Niagara This Week's community events page. The town of Fort Erie has a community events page. Google, but I came up dry. Pre-pandemic in this town, we used to be phenomenal at posting our community events. What's coming up? What's going on? Since the pandemic, I feel like we've shied away from that, in part because we've had fewer community events, I'm sure, but things are beginning to return back to normal now. And I think as a town, we need to get better at promoting the things we have going on. Because if you live here in Fort Erie, and I know that most of you listening do, there is always something going on. There's always something to do. And I think maybe in some cases, we just need to do a little better job of informing the rest of the community about what we're doing if we want more people to come out and participate in our events. Anyway, I'll give a shout out to one local organization that I think is doing a phenomenal job promoting their events. That is Fort Erie Public Library. There was always something going on at the library, stuff for all ages, virtually all days of the week. One such event, just as an example, coming up this Saturday, and I believe Saturday is March the 5th. It'll be story time for children ages 2 to 7. So this is a longer version of story time that happens throughout the week. So you can join for an extra long story time, complete with stories, songs, games, and a snack. This month's theme is cakes. The snack will be a cupcake. Everybody likes cupcakes. And this is all happening this Saturday at the Centennial location. Anyway, next week, my guest will be Jamal Mills Alexander, whose name I feel like I always mispronounce, but she is the owner and operator of Jamazing Boutique, a newer addition to downtown Ridgeway. So I'll have a great chat with her. So long, Fort Erie. Thanks for joining me, and have a great week.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones, a sales representative with RE/MAX Niagara Realty Limited Brokerage. Follow @BuyWithBrent on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates. Subscribe to the Fort Erie Podcast on popular platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and catch a new bite-sized episode every week. Until next time.